Yeah, yeah. So anyone pops in now.
Okay. So here it's just straight into YouTube from that program.
Yeah. I'll talk you through it all.
Yeah.
It's going to make us rich, mate.
That's really cool.
Yeah. The thing is, you need two extra bits of equipment. One is like a set for $7,000 for this Marketign
Yeah.
core, and the other thing is a 20 minutes inside like a live back. We used to use it in news, and it has like 12 segments in it, and together they give you an amount live. So that if we didn't have Wi-Fi, we would still get it out. So I just need to figure out.
For this sort of stuff, you can probably do it. Like you can probably safely bet that most places will have Wi-Fi.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the kind of. I was gonna, yeah, I'm gonna put it like give you extra Wi-Fi. That's the first thing I'm doing.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Welcome to the future, Jared. Need a Wolverine?
Ah, yeah. It'd be cool once you can get two cameras. Four. Yeah. What are you gonna shoot with four cameras?
Yeah.
You get audience reactions.
Yeah, we'll just like bigger events where they want it to,
Yeah.
this is gonna be. Yeah, we'll just do one. We're on now, so anything you say will be good. Or just, there's a problem.
It's really like 15 seconds delayed.
Now there's plenty of food, guys, so don't be shy to go up for seconds. Although I'm sure any leftovers will get quickly.
Can I just ask, what are these ones? Are they?
There are two types. One's with passion fruit, as you can see, and the other one is raspberry. And yes, it is yogurt.
Right.
Are you non-dairy?
No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what.
I'm pretty sure it's yogurt. I should know. I can't remember, to be honest.
Thank you.
They're good, aren't they? Yeah. Yes, it is yogurt, I believe. live streaming.
Oh, you're live streaming.
So I think I'm on camera at the moment. Oh well. It's hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Spaces and I think I can't remember where because most of the people here don't know.
But that's good.
It is good, but it means it's
I think that's good, but it's hard. I know.
Oh, I know. Oh,
We're
she's
name badges.
she used to work
with
yeah.
Will.
So where is she now?
Allianz
Oh,
with Jackie.
with Jackie. How funny. I was thinking, I know that face, but I
Everything,
can't.
mate, but largely speaking.
Oh, that's hilarious. Hello, I've just realised who you are.
I know.
I was like, I can't put two and two together. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's such a small world. So you're working with Jack, well, in the same
in
team.
Allianz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, too funny. There you go. Hello. Hi, Janine. Nice to meet you.
It's just gone 3 months since I was here.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So when Jackie sent the email around, I was like, you guys are impressed.
Well, welcome back. Yeah.
My new title is content producer. So
Oh, great. Perfect. Yeah, no, well, I'm hoping, I hope it's, I mean, it's, I'll go into this obviously, but there was so much to go through that, you can only like sort of focus in on one or two topics,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, too funny. Okay, good. Oh, hello. How are you? Yeah, good. That's good. Keep eating. Yeah. The catering project. So sometimes they do catering from Stillbar. It's quite expensive, so we just order direct from the catering project. Great. Yeah. No, and you can order online, and there's loads of different selections. So it's quite. No, it was good.
So can we watch
Nice glasses.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Can we watch the link afterwards?
Yes, I'll send it out afterwards.
That's great.
It's
Well done.
part of our hi. Hi, Janine. Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Good.
Relaunch a new brand.
I'm terrible at memory. Yes, so we'll do that after the event. We'll send it out and and then promote it and use it as gated content. Yep.
I did have a few replies from Corey that couldn't come, but they were interested.
Yeah.
I've
So
sent them
that's
the link.
and we're going to actually market the presentation afterwards as gated content just to get more.
And thanks for sending that LinkedIn stuff through. That's
Yeah,
really
we're still growing.
Oh my God,
to know.
sorry. You know what? Actually, they do have native video now.
Yes, that's what I heard.
But it's
I'm not
only
sure
on
if
a
you're allowed
personal. No, it's only on. It's not on company account, so it's only on the app. So which means you can't really use it for company accounts. They are launching it soon. Well, they're starting to roll it out. I think in the US for advertising, which means it will be broadly available. But I don't know. It's in beta phase, so it's coming. It's just a bit slow. Yeah.
They've had a lot of demand for searchable video content, apparently.
Yeah, of course.
We get a lot more results with individual posts than
Oh.
nothing happens on a company page.
You know what? Most are like that.
Yeah.
That's, so you have to kind of use the personal
Yeah.
profiles to leverage
That's exactly
the company
right.
stuff. So it's all about
And it
that
can be
interconnectivity.
depending on the person, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Of
like a
course.
sales
Yeah,
strategy rather than
absolutely.
marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I should just keep an eye on the time. What time is it?
Almost 1:45.
Yeah. Has there many more people left? Okay. Nicole can't come. That's okay. Priscilla can't come. Okay. Yep, let's kick off in a minute. Yeah, there's a few people that haven't arrived yet, but I think we'll just kick off.
Whenever you're ready, yeah. It's all streaming now. So
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll just do a bit of a... Hey everybody, thank you for coming. We're just waiting on a few more people, so if you're okay to just hang for another 5. Is that okay? Yep. And then we'll kick off. Awesome. Keep mingling. Keep eating. There's plenty of food, so don't leave hungry.
Yeah,
I think we're
One of the speakers.
Yeah.
I really like his
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, he's awesome. I love him. I saw your post yesterday. I'm
UK
like
team
in
know
love
him quite
with him.
well.
Oh, did
Yeah,
they? I went and
yeah.
chatted to him. Well, because I listened to his presentation, and I kind of like, I've got a bit of a professional crush on him, right?
Yeah, yeah,
'cause
yeah,
he's so
I get
good.
that, yeah.
He's so good. And so I'll talk about. I'll raise a couple of things that he talked about
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
It's so hard with these things because, like, you know, there's so much, and you can
I
only
know.
like kind of scratch the
Everyone here will
surface.
want different things,
Of course,
you know.
but that's okay. It's just a, you know,
Yeah.
sprinkling.
to make small things.
Yeah, but he was good, and I went up to him afterward and said, "Oh, listen,
He
love
only
your
really
stuff."
does B2B, right? Which is your
Yeah,
thing
yeah, yeah. They're specialists in B2B. I think they probably do a little bit of B2C, but they absolutely are deep in B2B. So that's kind of what they're known for. So, but I reckon because you know they were required this year, earlier this year they were required. Sorry. Yeah, they were required by a broader communications group. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, 15 or something. And, you know, because they're looking to kind of grow into the States and setting up it.
So this is a good profile for him there.
Yeah, but he does a lot of speaking. I've seen him, you know, obviously he won the content marketing thing last year and he's sort of on the, I just think he's really clever and funny, you know,
Oh, yeah, the way
and
he
just
writes is
really,
great.
he's an amazing writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing writer. So, yeah, but I went up to him and was like, you know, I think you're really great. I'd love to, like, you know, maybe I could interview. I was like, so cramped. I was like, oh, I do this stuff admirably. And he's like, yeah, just, you know, send me a thing on Twitter.
So good.
Of course, I didn't do anything about it, but you know, it's like, what do I ask him? But I should do. Yeah, I should do.
For your talks, right?
I should do. I should do.
Maybe you could record him doing something.
I could. Hello, sorry. How are you people? Oh, well, however many, I kind of just said earlier, we'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, hello, good to see you. Yeah. Have breakfast, please. Plenty of food, hot and cold. Hi, Janine.
I'm Matt from Adma.
Hi, Matt. Oh, good to meet you.
Travel far.
No.
Just a couple of floors.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hot food, cold food, drinks on the other table. Please help yourself. And find a spot. We'll be kicking off soon.
We good?
Do you know what I realised yesterday?
Right now.
Do you know what I realised yesterday? I didn't have any breakfast. I had coffee. I had lunch at 4:30, and I didn't eat anything else for the rest of the day.
Awesome.
And I went to bed at God knows what time.
I had a red rooster out last night. I was so hungry. And so I got off at Town Hall. And I'm like,
Where are you? Oh,
no, this morning. This time.
yeah, but why?
I don't know. I had to
Fair
get
enough.
back on the train. I was
Hilarious. Grab a seat. Listen, there's plenty of chairs, seats at the front. No one likes to sit at the front, but but there are seats at the front, or you can hang at the back if you want. It's up to you. Oh, you've got to leave. Yeah. So I'll get bit of merch. Okay. All right. Yep. All right. We'll probably kick off in about 2 minutes. Oh, yeah. Hello. How are you? You know what? I saw your name pop up and then I couldn't see you in the... There was somebody else from your...
Elaine's,
Yes.
Elaine, she should be here.
Yeah.
She works in my team.
Yes,
But I
but
didn't
no, I
register.
didn't. I know, because I saw it pop up, but then when we went into... It wasn't there. It's really odd.
Surprise.
I'm surprised.
We'll see you
Are we
someday.
seeing you on... Yeah, well, Rachel didn't confirm.
Yeah,
Is it
she
about
said we'll
10-ish?
sort it out
Is that...
today.
Oh, okay, cool. Let me know.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, whatever. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good morning, everybody. Feel free to get up and get your last bits of brekkie. There's still a couple more people coming in, but we'll get started because we don't want to run out of time. Thank you so much for making the effort to get up bright and early and come along. Really appreciate it. I know it's hard finding time, particularly this time of year. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. Hope you find today's session enjoyable. Content marketing world was a assault on the senses, an orange assault on the senses in many ways, but it was, really kind of packed to the brim with sessions and, information and keynotes and all the rest of it. And it really was a bit of analysis by paralysis, trying to figure out which sessions to go to. So today is absolutely kind of skimming the surface. We're trying to go deep on a couple of areas, couple of topics, but as you can sort of see around the room, there were lots of different topics discussed. So if you've got any other questions after this, or you want to, find out a bit more about any other part of content marketing that we obviously don't cover today, then please feel free to shout out. Also, feel free to ask any questions along the way. We are live streaming this event in true content marketing style, mostly so that people who couldn't make it today can watch it back, and everyone will get a link after this as well. Live streaming thanks to Luke Rosen, who is a live streaming video extraordinaire. So if you need to live stream your next event, Luke's your man, and we'll share his details afterwards. So let's get started. If the thing works. So content marketing, here we go. Content marketing world, 3 days, 7 keynotes, 156 sessions, of which we probably attended, I don't know, I lost count, 40 or 50 or something like that. So it was awesome. A great opportunity to mingle with, really some of the leaders in the space, and also just everyday business people and marketers trying to kind of make their way through content marketing, which, as you know, is evolving so quickly. Words from the godfather himself, Joe Polizzi, who, as most of you will probably know, is the founder of Content Marketing Institute. He has lots to say on the topic, and I'll let him do the talking. I hope this works. Oh. Sorry, have to go manual. Oh, don't you hate that? It was working when we tested it. What do I do, Luke? Dope. Sorry, guys. Okay, so what Joe says, what Joe says, is there a way we can get that video to work separately? You can't? Yeah. What Joe says is it's all about the audience. So if growing the audience is the #1 focus of content marketers and should be the #1 focus of all brands. We can push more content out, we can run tactics, we can run campaigns, but if we're not focusing on growing an audience, growing a marketable audience, then we're missing the point. And he says it much more eloquently than I can, and what his message really ultimately from his very first keynote all the way kind of through the conference was audience, audience, audience. Focus on growing an audience. Don't worry about monetization. Don't worry about ROI. Don't worry about all those things, because they will come. If we grow an audience, we build true value with that audience, we can then market to that audience and create revenue and create value from that audience. And we'll go into some examples of how this plays out. Really bummed this didn't work, but we'll try and figure out why. Okay. Relying on accessing someone else's audience is risky business. So we know that today, so many of the big players particularly you know, the Facebooks of the world, the Amazons, the Googles, etc., really control the marketplace to some degree. And as marketers, what we're doing is relying and having often to rely on other people's audiences to get, you know, share of voice, to get the eyeballs, to get the kind of, you know, our messages out there. The reality is that there's a really kind of flawed approach with this. We know that there's scrutiny over measurement errors. We can't validate often the views that we're getting. We know that we're paying over the odds for you know, eyeballs, if you like, that we can't actually sort of validate. So how do we kind of solve this problem of constantly paying over the odds for maybe the chance to get viewability, to get awareness, to get reach, without actually, you know, being able to measure and you know for sure that we're achieving that. Back to Joe's point, it's all about building the audience. So if we're building our own database, we're building our own asset as an audience, then we've got full control. We're no longer reliant on the you know, big players to sort of access their audience. We're no longer reliant on them to sort of get our messages out. Robert Rose, who's a, you know, you probably, again, all know him, very close to content marketing world. He's the chief something or other at CMI. Talked, you know, has some really interesting points of view and a little bit kind of forward thinking around really the change in the role of content marketing today. If we think about the media and sort of marketing challenge, it's really all about how do we get in front of more people? How do we get in front of more people more often, you know, and really kind of build that awareness. So we know that finding audiences is sort of a high friction piece. So being able to get in front of audience is sometimes the hardest thing to do. Getting their attention then, so once we've got that audience, getting their attention, getting them to pay attention, so we can buy access to an audience, but then how do you get them to pay attention to what you're actually doing? And then how do you hold their attention and engage them for the, you know, short, medium, long term? He talked about, this is a little bit sort of out there, but he talked about the shift in content marketing really, and the shift in sort of audience as a business strategy. And he talks about the concept of, you know, back pre-digital, obviously mass media was the only way that we could reach audiences. You know, you kind of put together a, you know, super expensive ad campaign typically, you go out to market, you buy eyeballs, and then you sort of exit. So it's very much sort of an up and down, buying attention for a period of time. No kind of sustained process for engaging and building your own audience as an asset. Digital came along, we had access to audiences directly, we could circumvent the media to a degree. You know, we can go out through, you know, direct channels or semi-direct channels like Facebooks and LinkedIn's and all the rest of it to try and have a one-on-one kind of engagement with the audience. But that's sort of still flawed. It's still about, you know, reaching a broader group on someone else's channel. So we're not actually owning and building our own channels. Robert's view is that the way that this is moving forward is actually being able to build marketing and build audiences as a business strategy and build content as a strategy. And what that means is sort of thinking like a media company. So what are we doing to actually invest in building audiences? That we, you know, there's a bit of hard work there's a lot of hard work in fact to do that in the early days, but if we're building sustained value, we're engaging you know, at a deeper level, we've then got an asset that we can absolutely monetize in many more ways than we're able to at the moment, because it's an audience that is engaged with us, with our brand that we control. So, you know, marketers, our job is always to access audiences. It's to maximise reach, minimise the frequency. The key point here is that audiences are not buyers. So we're not talking about how do we get in front of more customers or potential customers. It's about how do we grow a broader marketplace that we can then turn into, or we can monetize in different ways, maybe not in ways that we currently think about how we drive revenue. Does that make sense? Some of this is a little bit. So if we take some examples that most of us know about, and building trusted audiences and thinking about marketing as a media, then some of the big examples, Mondelez, they're in the food business, right? But they're actually a publisher, so they're getting into the media space. They're buying publishing assets. They're getting into the space of actually owning audiences, and using that to not push product, but to actually demonstrate value, to build value with audiences that then they can kind of grow in different ways. We're all familiar with CMO. Obviously, it's a media asset owned by Adobe. It's all about helping. It's all about helping CMOs and helping marketers, find new value through marketing, and they're using content to actually demonstrate value and to show purpose, and in doing that, they're elevating their brand. They're creating different opportunities to drive revenue. Red Bull, really classic example. Red Bull, the drink, everyone knows it, but we also know them as probably one of the biggest content marketers. They launched a magazine some time ago, so they got into the sort of publishing space. I think it's called Red Bulletin. It publishes to something like 10 countries, I think, in 5 languages, distributes 2 million a month. 500,000 of that is paid subscribers. They actually sell content to publishers, to other publishers, and they're not judged. So that division of the business is not actually judged on how many cans of Red Bull they sell. They're judged on that unit has to make money on its own 2 feet. It's got to make revenue. It's got its own P&L. So it's actually running a separate business within a broader brand. Of course, there's some halo effect there, and by doing all the things that they're doing, they're creating value for Red Bull, the primary company, but they're running this piece as an asset within its own business, driving its own revenue stream, creating other value, events, sponsorships, the rest of it. So, what does audience value look like? What does that mean? If we take a typical kind of funneled approach, we've got subscribers. So people that subscribe into an audience, that's an addressable market that we have to deal with. And that's kind of the first level. It's just getting people, traditionally on our database, they're an addressable market, so we can talk to them directly. The next level is then, obviously, it's a targeted audience. So they meet some kind of business criteria that we deem is appropriate for us. The next level then is they're actually engaged. They're exchanging value with us. They value what we do, and they're happy to kind of continue in that sort of relationship, and they resonate and they take action. The ultimate, I suppose, is this idea of a trusted audience where we're constantly able to learn more about them, and through learning more about them, offer additional value which can be monetized, which we can drive more revenue from, which we can then start to sort of demonstrate how marketing operates as a revenue center and not as a profit center. And I guess that's really what's driving all of this. For us, at TSM, we kind of focus on marketing driving profit, marketing driving growth. That's our focus. And so for us, this kind of really resonates, because how is it that we can translate marketing to being just a cost center to actually showing and demonstrating value in a business, being able to actually drive new revenue streams that weren't available previously. That's, I think, the opportunity for marketing and for content marketing particularly. And we'll go into some examples of how this works a little bit later. So some myths busted. Content marketing is not advertising. Most people in this room know that, but let's kind of walk through it. We need to be thinking about content marketing, this came out again and again, as a product. It's not a project, it's not a campaign, it's not something that we do one quarter and forget about the next. It's actually a product. In the same way that you think about any product development, it's supported by campaigns. It creates other campaigns off the back of it, and it creates value on its own. So it's got to sort of stand alone and be able to generate its own value. That's what makes it powerful. It's not more efficient. I hate to break it to you. Anyone who's started content marketing knows that it's actually really hard to do. It's hard to do well. It's hard to do consistently. It takes time to build the capability, to build the learnings, to build the insight that actually makes it great. It's not a campaign. It's not something you can flick on and then flick off again. It just doesn't work that way. It's something that needs to be built for the long term. But it creates multiple lines of value, and it can and it should create multiple lines of value. And if we're not thinking about it that way, and we're only thinking about content creating one line of value, which might be how many clicks did I get to the website, or how many leads did I get in, or how much sales did I get at the end of this sort of quarter, then we're not thinking about the true potential of content marketing as a product, as a strategy. The ability is to actually create multiple lines of revenue and value, and that's the power of it, if it's done well and consistently. Does that make sense to people? Yep. Feel free to jump in with any questions. The reality is we know that content is still stuck in average. As you guys know, CMI run research every year where they kind of, the state of content marketing. Their latest study showed that, people, some stats that aren't surprising. Most people are still not committed to strategic content marketing. So most organisations still don't actually have a documented strategy in place. They're doing marketing, they're doing content, but there isn't necessarily an agreed direction for what that content is trying to do and what it's actually trying to deliver and how the business measures its success. And certainly not a framework of governance, a framework that really pulls the business together, that aligns the entire business along the strategy. And we know that in the absence of a true documented strategy that the business buys into, the chances of success are limited. It's interesting, one of the big changes from this year is that companies who are committed to actually growing an audience as their primary goal has gone up from 64% last year to 81%. So there has been this sort of shift in marketers understanding that actually it's what we need to focus on is growing an audience. Grow an audience, and then the revenue will come. So that is interesting. But the reality is that, in most parts, marketers and businesses are still doing things that are ineffective. They're still marketing in ways, delivering content marketing, not getting any ROI, not knowing how to measure ROI, in fact, but they're still just doing it. So Jay Baer, Convince and Convert, most people know him. He had a bit to say, and his key point was really, in true Jay style, relevance is the killer app. 76% of us will create more content this year than ever before. That's outstanding. That's an astonishing number, right? Like, so much more content. And we're all getting inundated with our feeds, right? Like, it's really difficult to actually, keep up with what's going on. So much is being bombarded at us all the time. But the reality is that most of the content fails. What do we mean by that? What does failure mean? Well, in Jay's words, more than 75% of content earns 0 links. So it doesn't get picked up in search, doesn't get any backlinks, and more than half get fewer than 4 shares. So we're creating all this content, some of it good, some of it not so good. We're pushing it all out there and for no one to see, for no one to engage with, for no one to pick up and pass along and be moved by. So that's a problem. And why is that? Jay's got a really interesting perspective. It's that, most content just actually doesn't matter enough to trade time for the information because it's a value exchange. So in today's sort of, world of micro attention spans and all the rest of it, what is it that's going to stop me and, stop me in my tracks and kind of, how do you sort of survive the swipe is kind of one of the things that we say. And that relevance is actually a value exchange, and you're competing for attention. And you're competing for attention not just with your competitive set, you're competing for attention with everyone else out there, with anything else that's occupying your audience's, mind space. And it's a pretty cluttered world. So what do we do about this problem? Jay says, stop creating more content. And I totally believe this. you know, create more value. Don't create more content, just create more value with the content. And one of his suggestions, and something that we do try and, you know, work with clients on, is thinking like a TV network. So going back to that media idea, thinking about creating episodal content, things that string together, that have a theme, consistent formats produced at regular times and frequencies. This is just kind of one example of a way to think about content. So we're kind of organising our thoughts and organising, you know, the content that we're creating around a particular mission, around a particular theme. We're educating the market and the audience around what to expect, and that way growing attention and interest. A really popular example is Whiteboard Fridays. It's really interesting when Doug Kessler wrote a great post about this. Actually, he interviewed Rand and found out that they were doing Whiteboard Fridays. So every Friday, I mean, it started off as a very kind of low production value, you know, piece of content. We're doing it for 2 to 3 years before it actually started outperforming their blogs. But they kept doing it every week, every week, every week, every week. They publish 52 times a week, every single week. No time off for Christmas, no time off for New Year's. Every week, consistently. And had they listened to the data, and you know, these are SEO experts, right? They're like deep into data. Had they listened to the data, they should have stopped. But sometimes data doesn't actually tell the full story. Sometimes you have to have a belief in what you're actually trying to do and what that broader mission is. And as long as you're starting and iterating and changing and adapting to what the audience needs and growing an audience, and you can see those, I guess, leading indicators, if you like, that things are starting to take some traction, then you've got to stick at it, you know? We've got to kind of continue. So 2 to 3 years before it started, you know, outperforming their blog. Now, mind you, their blog is a pretty high benchmark. So, you know, but still, that's a long haul. Podcasts, of course, I mean, you know, we all can think of lots of different episodal type content pieces that actually make the production process easier, make it more efficient, make the editorial planning, you know, really kind of concise and structured. It's a good way to think. So the other thing that Jay says that I love is that you cannot pay yourself out of mediocrity. So no amount of paid media will fix mediocre content. So stop amplifying bad content. Now, what does bad mean? In this context, it's actually about taking a step back and looking at your content. Let your content stand on its own 2 feet first. Figure out what's actually working. Of all your content pieces, what's performing? The things that have some organic and natural interest, amplify those. Put your media dollars behind those. So turn a 6 out of 10 content into a 9 out of 10. Don't try and turn a 2 out of 10 into a 6 out of 10. You know, that's just madness. So be really purposeful about your paid strategy as well. Yep, I'll leave it there. And amplify from the inside out. So let's not get too focused on, you know, engaging all these influencers. I mean, they are important, but engaging all these influencers and buying audience and buying share of mind, you know, start with who you know. Start with your staff. Start with your internal advocates. Start with your kind of customers, people that already know you and trust you, that have an audience of themselves, of their own, and amplify from the inside out. Start that way, and the growth can be a little bit easier. Doug Kessler. I have a bit of a professional crush on Doug Kessler. He's awesome, from Velocity Partners in the UK. He delivered a great presentation. They focus more in B2B, but his talk was about both. And his whole premise is, you know, we need conventions. We all work within certain conventions and rules, but let's not be slaves to conventions, and particularly in B2B. How many B2Bs are there in the room? Yeah. So, you know, I mean, in B2B, often we err on the side of caution. We're quite conservative. We, you know, it's a more complex sale. It's relationships. There's a big sales team typically involved. There are a lot of things that we need to, you know, consider, sometimes more over than B2C. But Doug says, let's not be slaves to convention. What does that mean? I mean, he says, you know, as marketers, it's our job to understand what those conventions are. So what are the conventions in our marketplace, in our industry? in our company, in our business? What are they? What are those kind of, boundaries? And, let's play with them a little bit. Let's kind of push and test some of them. Let's not play too safe. Because playing too safe sometimes means that what we do is we end up erecting, so to speak, the marketing defense barrier. And what he means by that is that, intrinsically, if we're all honest with ourselves, most people believe that marketing lies. If they see kind of marketing kind of coming through the door and by way of content or campaigns or messaging, a little bit of a barrier comes up, right? A little bit of the kind of shield comes up. It's like, oh, I'm a little bit skeptical about this. I don't know if it's if what I'm hearing is the absolute truth. Because deep down, everyone hates marketing because marketing lies. And we've trained the audience to know that marketing lies. So from, way back when they were advertising, using doctors to advertise cigarettes back in the, whenever it was, the 1800s or whatever it was, or, the benefits of this, and using kind of, marketing has a tradition of over-emphasising the truth, kind of ignoring the negativity and amplifying the positivity and all of these sorts of things. So if marketing is all about the brand and it's free to lie and it's, overly optimistic all the time and it's one-sided and it's very sales focused and it's all about the brand and it's interrupting value, then content marketing has a bigger opportunity. And content marketing is absolutely 100% about the audience, not about the brand. We can tell the truth. It's okay to tell the truth in B2B. It's okay to admit that not everything is perfect, that we're fallible. How do we humanise B2B in a different way? How do we actually make B2B more authentic and more approachable? It's utility-led. It's about the buyer having power, and we know the importance of that, and delivering true value. Now, I've got another video coming up, so I'm really annoyed that it's not going to play. But what we'll do is, well, actually, we'll give it a go. It might play. But if it doesn't, we'll send you the link. Now, some of the language in here may offend, but what this is, if this plays, what this is talking about is the fact that what this is talking about is that, it's okay for marketing to bend the rules, to play within conventions. It's okay for marketing to, oh, it's not going to work. Let's see. No, it's not going to work. Okay. It's a cracker of an ad. And we'll send you the link. So apologies, it's not going to work, but we'll send you the link. And we'll put the link on the live stream page as well. But this ad, I'll just kind of talk you through it quickly. It's for a car, actually. And it plays with this convention of, marketing shouldn't lie. It shouldn't swear, sorry. And this ad is, all these cute little tiny kids swearing their heads off. And they're swearing their heads off, clearly because they hear their parents swearing their heads off. It's kind of what happens if you've got kids, you know that. And at the very end of the ad, which is kind of this shot, he's like, where did you learn that? Like, I learned that from you. And, the payoff in the ad is, when you drive the wrong car, you teach the wrong words because, you can't park it. Fuck this. And that's kind of the payoff of the ad. So it's actually really funny. So you're just going to have to trust me on that one. Okay. But, this idea that, it's pushing the boundaries, it's unexpected, and that's what makes it great, actually. That's what makes it great. I'm not suggesting that everyone go out and start, putting F words in their ads and their content, but within your, within your industry, within your market, what boundaries can you play with that mean that you're actually able to get some attention, that you're able to resonate and really kind of strike a chord with your audience that they can relate to, and that's really important, particularly I think for B2B. Okay, so we'll jump into sort of ROI. Big topic of conversation. There were loads and loads of things related to ROI on different levels, to be honest. What we know is, ROI is really difficult to deliver, to achieve, to measure for marketers. It always has been, by the way, right? It always has been. But now in the digital age, it's becoming more and more important and expected. You know, CEOs, executives expect that marketing can show return on investment. And by return on investment, we mean revenue, right? Typically, or leads, or whatever that is. But, you know, how do we do that? Because we know it's a challenge. We know that most of us can't do it well. We know that we're inundated with data, but the ability to make sense of any data, and make sense of it in a way that's commercial, and working out, well, what are the data points to actually look at? What are the things that do make a difference? Let's not get confused by looking at all the data. Let's focus on the measures that actually count. What do we do there? So, you know, content marketing measurement is hard. There are hard ROI and there's soft ROI, and it's important to understand that there's a mix of both. So, you know, what does ROI even mean? For B2B, usually, in the vanilla sense, it means leads, it means revenue, it means pipeline, it means sales. That's, you know, pretty common for a B2B environment, you know. It's all about making that sales team productive, making that sales team happy. For B2C, it's often about, you know, utility or engagement or awareness or, you know, journey, you know, sort of the customer journey, impact across the customer journey. Of course, there are hard ROI measures as well, but there tends to be, you know, more weight given to some of those soft metrics. And I suppose, you know, it's important to have a balance of both. And what's really critical, though, is actually as a team, as a business, agreeing on what you're going to measure. And this is the biggest probably challenge that we come across often working with clients, is that as a business, there isn't an agreed measurement platform. And that's some of the things that we, you know, I mean, that's one of the things we look to deliver in strategy, is what does success actually look like? What are we trying to do here? Because you can't build a strategy for something if you don't know what it is you're trying to deliver. So always start with the end in mind, and so important to get the whole business on the same page. Because as we'll discover in a couple of case studies coming up, you constantly have to sort of, you know, market the marketing, right? Constantly have to sort of fight for your next meal, fight for that extra bit of budget. So, case studies, let's get into the fun stuff. First one we'll talk about is SAP. This is a pretty quick one. B2B, common B2B, you know, not unusual that most of their content is about product. Product. Only a small 6% is consumer content. That's kind of the antithesis of content marketing, right? About the brand, not about the customer. So one of their ad campaigns, Run Better with SAP, cost about 200 grand, 99% bounce rate, not great. It was an awareness campaign, so no real conversion metrics, no search traffic, because no one's searching for an ad campaign really, unless it kind of goes viral and, you know, then everyone wants to check it out. And no social shares. The Digitalist, which is a content asset, a content hub built by SAP, their goal is to help executives understand technology, you know, drive business innovation, et cetera, By contrast, completely content-driven, audience-driven, cost 100 grand, half the budget of the ad campaign, 70% engagement, circa 1,000 conversions over the course of a year, so tracked back to subscribers or, you know, viewers of that, that content hub. 50% of traffic comes from search. So they're driving content that's being found in search. And that, you know, so people are looking for answers to questions. They're coming up with the SAP articles and they're driving back to the site. 10% social shares. That's an example of content marketing done well. Thinking about the audience, not talking about the product. The flow-on effects of product and revenue and sales will come, and we'll talk about another example that demonstrates that. But you know, I just thought that was quite a poignant contrast. How about this crew, hey? Any guesses for what industry this is? Nailed it, yeah. Good old finance. Conservative business. American Funds, Capital Group, some of you guys know this story. These guys came in, so the business, the team from Capital Group came in and presented their case study. I wanted to share, we go a little bit deep on this because, you know, they were generous enough to actually, you know, honestly lift up the hood and share their data, share their insights. It was a really practical case study, which I love because often as marketers, you just don't get that. And so I really wanted to kind of share this. American Funds, super conservative financial services, you know, group, compared in with the big guys like, you know, Vanguards of the world and BlackRocks and all the rest of it, positioned in their thought leadership sphere, you know, 10 plus, whereas all the others are in the kind of top 3, top 4. So, you know, there was a bit of a problem. What they wanted to do is, you know, the marketing team wanted to build a content brand. And I love this quote from Andrew Davis. You know, content brands are created for an audience. Branded content is created for a business. That distinction I thought was really nice. So it's not enough just to write a blog and, you know, weave your product into it and the brand into it and this is how we support, you know, that's still branded content, but content brands are all about the audience and completely selfless, I suppose. So their editorial strategy was quite simply to solve the audience's problem. Now this came from, you know, their advisors and who've been in the business basically saying comments like this, you know, my clients, they want to get out of, you know, international stocks as an example, but, you know, I show them the data, I tell them the logic, but logic's not working. What else can I say to them? What else can I, you know, tell them that will help convince them that actually we've got their best interests at heart, that we know what we're doing, that they should trust us, and, you know, what can I tell them? And this, you know, this is where the content strategy came from. So, I mean, where do they play? If we think about this as a you know, paradigm, there's, you know, the news. The news reports on what happened today. The analysis of the news is, well, you know, why did it happen? And, you know, let's go into the details of it. And where Capital Group wanted to focus is in those top 2 areas. So the perspective, what does this mean and what should I do? So let's get granular, let's get focused. From an audience's perspective, what does the fact that Brexit happened mean to me? What does this mean to me and what should I do as a result? So using Brexit as an example, Bloomberg reported on the news, Wall Street Journal analyses, you know, the news and what's happened, and Capital Ideas, which is the name of their content hub, provides the perspective on it and the, you know, this is what it means for you and this is what you can do. Now, taking one example, one content piece on this topic, one of the top opt-in articles delivered got over 11,000 unique visitors to the site, nearly 14,000 page views and 3.8 minutes time spent on site. So pretty sticky content, you know, by today's measures. Taking that a step further, what did that mean in terms of, how did they get to that? If you think back to Jay's example or Jay's comments earlier, it was about, well, how do we, you know, amplify from the inside out? So use your internal audiences. Most of their views, most of their, you know, visits, etc., were through their own sales force. It was that pass along factor. So using their own assets, using their own team to actually pass on the information, push it along, and that's what earned the greatest, you know, the greatest spike there. Second to paid and then owned. So don't underestimate, particularly for large organisations, and I know there are a few in the room, don't underestimate the power of your people behind the brand and the power of your people to amplify your content. If it's good content, if they believe in it, and particularly in B2B, if it helps them do their job, they will absolutely amplify on your behalf. So the business is all about show me the money, right? It's all about the money. So how do we show the money? Sorry, this should have animated, but never mind. So if we concentrate on the first 2 rows here, in 2016 to 2017, you can see, can you guys see at the back there? You may not be. You can see the dramatic increase in all measures, quite frankly. What I love most is, I mean, you know, the visits, the mobile visits is pretty expected, but the visits is astonishing. The time spent on site, up to 6 minutes, that's an average, right? That's astonishing, that's amazing. What I love is the cost per click. So they've been able to to grow their audience and grow engagement to a point that they've been able to reduce that cost per click down to a negligible amount, basically. So what they're doing is they're growing their own audience, so they're becoming less reliant on advertising. They're becoming less reliant on the Googles and the Facebooks and the LinkedIns of the world to buy audience, because they're able to grow their own asset. That's the power of content marketing. And downloads, of course, it's all about growing that audience, right? Open rates is really interesting. So their capital ideas, their Content Hub newsletter, way outperforms their standard EDM that goes out by quite a bit. Now, how did they get to that? How did they get to that phenomenal growth in subscribers? You can see, I don't know how I do the thing on this. Oh, here we go. You can see that, they had to go at it for a while, right? It was, slow growth, slow growth, slow growth. This is not unexpected. It takes time. It takes time to build. It takes time to, get into the right rhythm. It takes time to build an audience. They also employed a few strategies on site to, kick up, if you like, optimise their opt-in rate and their subscribe rate. But you can see that there's an inflection point, and there's a point at which it actually just starts to sort of take off. Once you get enough of a following, you get that kind of, you get the compound effect, if you like, of people engaging with it and sharing it, and it does take off. But it takes time, it takes discipline to sort of do the hard yards to sort of get there. And I know there are, some of you in the room that are already doing this, and so you know exactly, what I'm talking about. You're feeling it, you're running it at the moment, and you're kind of in this sort of early stage, some of you, of building that kind of core audience. It's so important to just do it consistently and keep at it. The money. They can actually, they can attribute $100 million, $100 billion, I should say, $100 billion in investable funds back to that capital ideas. So the audience that's engaging with that are actually then investing money. So they're buying the information. They're trusting, capital group. They're believing what they're saying. They're reinvesting their funds. They're actually, they're spending money. There are some other stats which I don't have in here. I can't remember the source actually. Something like, I can't remember the source, so apologies for that. But data that shows that, for one particular brand, their subscribers have 9 times more value in terms of revenue value than non-subscribers. They can actually demonstrate that. So there is value in growing an audience. And this is just for the core product, right? This is not any other monetization. There are lots of ways you can then, once you've got an audience, that you can monetize the audience. Some of you in this room do that. There are lots of ways to do that. But this is just off a core product. So the advice from the team, they were very generous with their advice, was focus. Just focus on creating an owned platform, an owned property that's targeting a particular audience, and just start. So it's not going to be perfect when you start. It's not going to be elaborate probably when you start. It's not going to be sophisticated. But pilot it, make small steps, iterate, just actually get going, because it's only through experimentation that you'll work out what's working and what's not. Create a newsroom, we've all heard this, but create a newsroom, and the idea here is not to necessarily physically create a newsroom, but this concept of having an organising framework around your content. So actually have someone who owns the content, owns the editorial strategy, isn't swayed and influenced too much by the whims of the business, so that you don't get caught up in knee-jerk reactions of just wanting to sell. Really kind of put that editorial hat on and be true to the mission of the brand, the content brand that you're building. Provide value to the audience. It will return itself in spades. And, identify those champions in the business. That's what these guys did. So they went, it was like hand-to-hand combat, they referred to it as. Actually going in and talking to key, advisors and salespeople in the business, selling in the idea, showing them how to use it. They now use, so some of the bigger advisors use the platform in their sales presentation. They actually use it and they talk about the commentary in the context of, you know, the editorial that they're putting out there. So actually sell, you know, market the marketing, right? Sell what it is you're doing to the business, sell what it is you're doing to the team, sell the value of it, sell the results from it, because you still have to, unfortunately, in marketing, earn the budget. And smart distribution. We've talked about that a couple of times. Okay, we'll jump to creating a team. We're nearly at the end, guys. Thanks for the patience. Creating a content team, what does that look like? I mean, you know, you all know that today's marketing environment is so dispersed. There are so many elements that fall under marketing today. It's a little bit out of control. But what does a content team need to look like? The guys at Content Marketing Institute actually shared their framework, and I'll just sort of talk about this briefly. What I loved about this, and there's lots of different frameworks out there, right? There are, you know, lots of different frameworks. What I particularly like about this framework is, you know, we all know that it takes an arsenal of skills to deliver on content. You know, you've got the strategy, the writing, the design, the creative, the data, the analytics, all of those things to actually make something work. What I love though is these elements here. You know, what does it take to build a team that understands and is dedicated to content? That ability to focus and prioritise, you know, because let's face it, you know, as marketers, you will get bombarded from the business at all directions. So how do we focus, how do we prioritise on what's important for the audience? Someone who has outside passions, I thought this was great, you know, kind of an interesting person, you know, someone who's interested in things, because that creates curiosity, you know, and curiosity is great for understanding, you know, the hidden nuggets, the hidden hooks in things. Someone who can actually take feedback, constructive feedback, because you'll get plenty of it, right? Everyone's got an opinion. And a bit of a whatever it takes attitude. So willing to sort of go that extra mile, willing to, you know, work outside the boundaries, and some versatility. In terms of the mindset, this empathetic to the audience is really important. So constantly wearing that audience hat. You know, what is it that the audience is going to get out of this? I understand the value for the business, but what's the value for the audience? Because if we stop creating value for the audience, guess what happens? We lose the audience. And that's the very thing we're trying to build. Differentiate content. You know, how does someone with an editorial and content marketing mindset look at something and say, what's the spin on this? You know, what's the hook? What's the angle that's going to get interest? How can we look at this slightly differently? How do we differentiate ourselves from all of the others who are pushing the same content out? You know, they understand the impact on the business, so they've got a bit of a commercial head on their shoulders. You know, they're not completely in the art of it. There's a little bit of the commerciality there. Storytelling, obviously, really important. So, you know, whether it's a designer or a writer or a strategist or whoever it is in that content team, this sort of, they understand the art of storytelling. And experimentation, let's face it, we only know through trial and error and through learning. You know, we take best practice and we, you know, deliver that, and then we iterate and we make changes along the way. So I just thought that was a really great framework, I suppose, for thinking about, well, what makes a good content team? Because it's not just about the skills, as we know. It's often about the type of people in the team and their attitude and their behaviour and the way that they engage. The Capital Group shared what their team looked like, so I thought it was worth, you know, putting up that example. So when they first started, you know, it started very slowly. It started, you know, as a kind of a smaller piece. Scripps SJR is their agency, their content agency. They provide the kind of content production, the design work, etc. And then once they started getting some success and they realised that, you know what, there's actually some, you know, there's something in this thing called content marketing, they broadened out the team. Still, SJR is still very pivotal, so they provide a lot of the services, but they've built more of this newsroom idea. And I'm not suggesting, and I actually don't know, to be honest, I don't think these are individual people. It might be that one person wears 2 or 3 hats, right? That's just the reality. It might be that some of them are probably freelancing and contracting. That's the reality of today, is that it's a hybrid model. So typically it's the brand does some things, an agency does some things, you know, that's the way that we build a content team these days, particularly in the early days, to provide that support. I just thought that was an interesting example because it's a real life brand. Closing thoughts, last slide. Well done for hanging on. Just some quotes that I thought were great that, sort of took out from a few of the sessions. Market your values instead of your products. Don't be a zombie. Zombies all look the same. I just think that's hilarious. How do we differentiate? How do we actually show value? Doug, loosen up, find a voice. B2B content doesn't have to be boring. Let's have a little bit of fun within a remit. GE, Linda Boff, CMO at GE. GE are big in content marketing, as you know, the leaders really in the space. I don't believe in taglines anymore. GE focuses on showing up as a person, not as a company. I think that's great because it's so important in B2B. How do we be, people resonate with authenticity, right? They resonate with people. So how do we turn a brand how do we personify a brand? How do we humanize a brand? In GE's case, it's about embracing their geekiness, and they've got some great examples and shared some great examples and ads that they've done that delivers on that. Frank from Adidas, commit yourself to the long run. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Don't rush the process. Take your time, build the strategy, build your team, do the legwork. It's, and can't emphasize that enough. I think, unfortunately, it has been a buzzword for a few years, content marketing, and people jump in thinking, okay, let's just punch out all this content and the revenue will come. It just doesn't work. Just doesn't work that way. And it's getting harder and harder. It's getting more expensive because, finding audiences and getting audiences is becoming more expensive because the big media players control them. So how do we disrupt that? How do we start building our own assets? That's it, guys. Thank you. That was really just a very high level, tried to go deep in 3 kind of areas. So, audience, thinking of content marketing and thinking about growing an audience, ROI, what are the things we need to think about and what does the team need to look like? All manner of topics were discussed. Storytelling, creativity, like nitty-gritty things on analytics and data, how you actually create an editorial plan. All of these details were discussed. So it's impossible to obviously share all of that in one small session. But if you've got any questions, please do feel free to shout out. Big thanks to Luke and the team for doing this live stream. We'll share his details as well if you guys want to take advantage of that. It's recorded as well, so it will be available on demand. So we'll send you the link. You can share it along with your teams and sort of, play it back if you like to. We'll also share those videos, so apologies for those not working. Massive fail on our part, never mind. And yeah, follow us on LinkedIn. That's kind of our channel of choice. Questions, please. Hit me with it. Don't be shy. Anyone? No one? Was it useful? Yep.
Who did you find the most engaging presenter?
Oh, God. Really tough. Who surprised me the most? Who surprised me the most was Gordon Levitt. Oh, my God, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Because I didn't expect him to be so amazing. I didn't expect him to be so focused and so humble and such a great kind of thinker around content, around collaboration. His whole thing was around collaboration and co-creating content and actually building a model that enables a range of artists to build on each other's content and then take that to market and then sort of monetize that. So he was the most surprising for me. I love Doug. He was awesome. And, funny and witty and all of those things. All of the big guys, Jay, they were all amazing. I thought the most, which is why I've spent a bit of time on it, the Capital Group presentation, I just thought was really practical. It was an under the hood view from a brand's perspective on what they did, how they did it, how they sold it in. So for me, that was like really great practical takeaways. Yeah. Don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
I have a question about sort of the different channels you might use to produce your content, whether that is your website that's
I think to answer that question, the overwhelming feeling was whatever the medium you choose, build an audience on your own platform. So that platform can be your website. So what I mean by your own platform is you're building an addressable market whose data you own, that you can build more data about. So that could be the website. It can be a podcast to a degree because you don't get all the analytics. But I think the key to that is, building an addressable market. So whether you're using a podcast or some other format to grow awareness, what's your strategy for migrating that audience to an owned platform? What's that strategy for not just creating content and building an audience on YouTube or on Facebook or on LinkedIn who's you're then at the mercy of their algorithms and, how they deem you can sort of, get in front of your audience. What's the strategy about migrating it to an own platform? And I think the other key around that is find, so I mean, I can't really answer the question because it's about finding the, oops, don't know what I did there. Finding the medium that works for you and do that consistently. So stick for the long haul. So video works for you, do that. Podcasting works for you, do that. But be consistent, and build an audience. So there's no kind of one is better than the other, really. It's just about finding something, doing it well, experimenting with a few others and actually building your own audience. That's the key.
You mentioned that value is so critical in terms of creating value. Were there any discussions about what people might standardly say is classified as good value versus not good value? Some discussions around that area?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately value is revenue, right? It's about growing revenue. And in this context, and particularly in Joe Polizzi and Robert's presentations and in their new book, in fact, value is about creating new revenue streams. So if we take one of their examples of building, Marketign as a media company almost, you've suddenly got an addressable audience there that you can suddenly sell sponsorships against. You can sell, so one of the examples I'll just, Salesforce, huge company, obviously. They run Dreamforce, which I'm sure everyone knows. It is the largest, largest technology conference in the world. They get something like 150,000 attendees. That creates its own, so that has actually got to make revenue on its own 2 feet. So that's what I mean by value, is creating new revenue streams so that it's not a cost to the business. Of course, there's some cost, but it actually drives revenue for the business. And it's got to pay for itself and then some. And it's got to work at a profit. And so creating value is about thinking, how do we build something that is self-funding? And not only self-funding, but actually makes a profit and opens up new revenue opportunities that you probably can't even imagine today. That obviously takes time, but in the first instance, it's absolutely about, how we demonstrate in revenue for the business in some fashion. Any other questions?
What was deemed to be the next big thing, whether technology-driven or channel-driven? What's the big disruptor just around the corner?
Good question. There wasn't a lot of talk about disruption, to be honest. I mean, obviously, obviously digital was discussed a lot. The reality that the Facebooks and Googles and Amazons of the world are starting to basically own audience, and as brands, as marketers, are at the mercy of the 4 giants, basically. And so that was probably discussed as the biggest threat, almost as, that's actually, that's happening. We can see it happening. We can see it coming. So what are we doing to mitigate that threat so that we're not reliant on those big 4 basically determining how we can reach audiences? That, so it is all back to the audience. I mean, that was a big theme of the conference, but I suppose not so much a big tech piece or whatever, but how do we mitigate this threat of these 4 giants basically owning the distribution? Because that's the reality. That's what's happening. Yeah.
If you're a team of 1, so strategy is the most important. What other aspects can you sort of cut it down to? So like, I don't know, 3 manageable ones that you should absolutely be focusing on if you don't have that much time.
Yeah. I mean, so I think especially if you don't have that much time, I think being super clear on what your strategy is, what you're trying to deliver, being very clear about your audience, who your audience is, and you know, starting with a smaller audience to start. You know, let's not pretend that everyone is our audience. Who's the primary audience? And you might want to focus on one or two. You know, don't try and do too many things. So choose one or two channels. Like, you know, actually just narrow down the scope. So keep it narrow. Try one channel. Try one, or you know, like, and build some confidence in doing that. Build some success. Almost pilot it in a way that you can then use to demonstrate back to the business, showcase some results, and use to basically, you know, ask for more help, ask for more resources. That's what I would do. Less is always more. Less is always more. And especially in content. So, you know, less platforms, less content, less audiences. Like, let's just focus. And once you start building some strength in that, it will naturally grow. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you again. Thanks for coming. Feel free to take some food on the way out. We'll shoot out an email, obviously, after this with the details and probably a few questions as well. And yeah, if you want to hang around for a chat, we're here. Susanna and Nick are here as well from the team. And yeah, happy to chat. Thank you. Bye.